As we see terrorism rearing its ugly head weekly in our country, near our homes, and in our other states, many ask, are we becoming apathetic? Will this continue? Are we powerless? To answer those questions, our guest speaker tonight is Bernard Kerik, former New York City Police Commissioner. For his service as a New York City police officer, Mr. Kerik earned numerous awards and also is credited for helping reduce crime in New York City when he was elevated to the police commissioner position. Kerik's tenure as police commissioner included overseeing the police response to September 11 attacks in 2001. You will hear what Commissioner Kerik advises on policing in this climate and the challenges for police in a post 9/11 world. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Kerik.
Good evening. Is it working? It's good. Can you hear me back there? First, I want to thank the Tea Party for the invitation to be here, and thank them for allowing me to talk to you about something that's extremely important to me, and I think extremely important to every one of you, important to this country. To give you a little background about myself before I get started, some of you may know, some not. I was actually born here in New Jersey. I was born in Newark. I lived there until I was about 12 years old. Right after the riots, we moved out and moved up to Patterson. My father at the time thought it was a good move. Lived in Patterson until I was 18 years old, and I took off and went in the military at 18, 19. I started my military time as a military police officer in the U.S. Army, came back home, and my career sort of took off. For 4.5 years, I lived and worked in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, working for the royal family. Now, this was 1978 to 1980 and 1982 to 1984. This is long before anybody in this room, I'm confident, knew anything about terrorism or heard anything about terrorism. But there was a lot going on in the world at the time. There was a lot going on in the Middle East at the time. People here weren't really focused on it. Things like the Beirut bombing, when they killed our Marines, when they seized Mecca in Saudi Arabia. There was a lot going on in the Middle East, but nobody focused on it here. I came back to the United States, and from that point on, my career sort of took off. So, to sum it up, I was a cop in North Carolina. I was a correction officer in Passaic County, New Jersey. I worked for Eddie Engelhardt. I was the commander of his SWAT team. I eventually became the warden of the Passaic County Jail. At 31 years old, I was the warden. I had a great job. I was one of the youngest jail administrators in the country. I had, I was the chief of the department, so I had a white shirt, stars, gold shield, car. And in 1986, I did something that a lot of my colleagues thought was very stupid. I left and gave up that gold shield and my car and my stars to become a New York City cop. And I became a New York City cop at the lowest level. I started out as a patrolman. I worked in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. I then went to Midtown South, Manhattan. I know a lot of you have been to New York City. You know where Times Square is. Well, when I was there as a cop, I had a foot post on West 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. Now, this was 1986, 1987. This was at a time when the crack epidemic was at its height. This was at a time that, for 8 hours a day, look, I loved the job. I loved what I was doing. And if you love the job and you love what you're doing like I did, then you didn't mind the stuff that I had to do. Because for 8 hours straight, I ran it was only one block. From 7th to 8th Avenue, man with a gun, robbery in progress, somebody got thrown off a building, somebody got pushed under a train, rapes, murders, mayhem. For 8 hours a day, that's all we did in Times Square. So I worked on patrol, I worked in uniform, then I went to plain clothes, and I worked in plain clothes, and I rode around in a yellow cab with 2 other cops. I had civilian clothes. I had long hair. Well, I had hair, period, at the time, but it was long. And I rode around Times Square looking for what we called hot jobs. So you wanted guns, robberies, things in progress. In 1988, I got transferred to the narcotics division. So now I grew my hair even longer. I actually had hair down to the middle of my back. I had 7 diamond earrings. I had a big goatee. And I bought drugs in Harlem, Spanish Harlem, and Washington Heights for 2 years. I was an undercover. And I was then transferred to the Drug Enforcement Administration and wound up overseeing, I don't know how many of you guys know anything about the sheriff of Passaic, the former sheriff of Passaic County. In fact, he was an undersheriff in this county before he was the sheriff in Passaic County, Jerry Spezial. Well, Jerry Spezial was actually my partner for 3.5 years in the DEA task force. We oversaw one of the most substantial drug investigations in New York at the time. In about a 2-year period, we seized in excess of 10 tons of cocaine. Now, to give you an idea what that means, that's like, see that yellow thing there, that yellow wall? All that in cocaine, up to the ceiling. So we seized about 10 tons of cocaine, about $60 million in cash, and locked up a whole bunch of bad guys. In 1994, something happened in New York City. We got a new mayor. New York City at the time had its highest crime rates in its history. 1990, we had about 2,490 homicides. The same rate that they had in Baghdad, I would imagine, at that time. It was a rough town, rough place, one of the worst cities in America. Rudy Giuliani came in and said, look, nobody wants to work, visit, go to school, or live in a place where they don't feel safe. So in order for us to bring up the economic value, the real estate value, tourism, we've got to do a bunch of things, but first and foremost, we have to clean up the city. And the New York Times and everybody laughed. Everybody thought it was a big joke. It's never going to happen. It's not going to work. New York City is too big, too disorganized, too corrupt, too dirty. But lo and behold, Rudy took over in 1994. By 1996, crime had dropped probably 30-40%. And that began the renaissance of New York City. In 1994, right after he came into office, I got a call to go meet with him and see him. And I knew him. I knew him for about 2 years at that point. I had worked on his security detail. But he also knew that I worked in the Passaic County Jail in New Jersey. So basically, he called me in and said, look, I want you to go to Rikers Island. I said, for what? He said, Rikers is having a big problem. New York Magazine, for you guys that were into New York Magazine at the time, they had a big article in 1994, Rikers is about to explode. At the time, they were doing about 130,000 inmate admissions a year. They were averaging about 150 stabbings and slashings per month. Their daily average population of inmates was about 22,000. So we came to an agreement I'm going to go to Rikers. I'll go for 6 months. I'll help out the commissioner, and then I'll come back. That was the agreement. I'm not exactly sure what happened. 6 months after I got there, I was promoted to first deputy commissioner. And I wound up in that position for about 2.5 years. That was the number 2 position in the department. I had 13,000 men and women that worked for me, and it was one of the biggest jail systems in the nation. I did that for about 2.5 years, and then one afternoon I got called over to City Hall, and the mayor says, "You're taking over," and I was appointed correction commissioner, so I took over the agency. I had that for another 2 years, and then one Friday night in August of 2000, about 11 o'clock at night, I got a phone call, and the mayor said, "Tomorrow morning, I want you to be in City Hall. You're going to become the city's 40th police commissioner." Now, any of you know who the first New York City police commissioner was? Who said it? Teddy Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was the first New York City police commissioner. So, in August of 2000, I became New York City's 40th police commissioner. And everything was great. Crime was going down. We were going to continue to reduce crime. Rikers Island was a model, international model, for efficiency, safety, and accountability. We had reduced inmate-on-inmate violence by about 93%. The city was doing really, really well. Tourism was at all-time highs. And that was going fine and dandy until 8:46 on the morning of September 11th. I was in my office that morning when the first plane hit Tower 1. My office was only about a half a mile from the towers. I could look out my conference room window and I could see the damage to the buildings, to Tower 1 itself. I thought it was a small plane initially. That's what I was told. A small aircraft hit Tower 1. When I saw the damage to the building, obviously it was bigger than a small plane. I just finished exercising in my office. I was getting ready for the day's work. I got dressed. I called the mayor. I told him I was going to meet him at Ground Zero. Well, didn't call it Ground Zero then. I was going to meet him at the Emergency Command Center. The mayor's command center was right across the street from Tower 1 at Tower 7. When I got down there, there was no way to get inside Tower 7. There were people jumping from Tower 1. They were coming off the building. I know you may have seen some of this stuff on TV, but I can assure you what was going on in reality in the early minutes after the attack was far worse than anything you saw. I saw people come down from the building 1, 2, 3 at a time, many. They were landing in the courtyard between Tower 1 and 2 and flying out toward Vesey Street. Backed up the vehicle. We waited for the mayor. The mayor arrived about 5 minutes later. Just before he got there, I was calling for a temporary command post to be put on the corner of Barclay and West Broadway. And there was this enormous explosion above us. And it's what you saw on TV when you saw that second plane hit Tower 2 and you see that big orange fireball blow out the north side of the tower. I was standing under it. I was in front of the building looking up thinking, what was that? I didn't know what it was. I didn't see the second plane. The second plane came from the southern end of Manhattan. All I saw was the explosion. And then after about 5 or 6 seconds, I realized that stuff up there is coming down on us. So we took off. We got behind Tower 7. We waited for all the debris to fall. I really didn't know what happened at the time until a couple seconds later, I could hear the aviation pilots, the helicopter pilots yelling that a second aircraft had hit Tower 2. And it was at that point that I realized we were under attack. So you have to ask yourself why, right? If I had to sum it up in a sentence or a gesture, there's the reason. That's why. The people that attacked us on September 11th, they despise the freedoms that that flag represents. The people that attacked us on September 11th were no different than the people that attacked the USS Cole the year before. They were no different than the people that attacked the Al Khobar Towers in Al Khobar, Saudi Arabia, Tehran. They were no different than the people that attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. They were no different than the people that threw Leon Klinghoffer off of the Achille Lauro in 1985. And they were no different than the animals that attacked the embassy in Beirut, killing our Marines. No different. Now, that's up until September 11th. The enemy we face today is no different. Whether it's Orlando, whether it's San Bernardino, whether it's the kids up in Boston, every one of them have the same mindset, the same mentality, and the same hatred for the freedoms that that flag represents. I have plenty of Muslim friends. One of the things I left out of my bio, after I left the New York City Police Department, after I was police commissioner, I was appointed as the interim minister of Interior for Iraq for President Bush. I was there until we appointed the actual minister of Iraq. I was also a special advisor to the King of Jordan. The King of Jordan is, if any of you have seen him on TV, is perhaps one of the smartest, brightest, well-spoken state leaders in the Middle East. I'm very good friends with him and his family. I worked for him for almost 5 years. Did a bunch of internal work in the kingdom. Good man. The King of Jordan is a devout Muslim. He despises the people that attacked this country and that has attacked his. On November 9th, 2005, 4 suicide bombers went into 3 hotels in Amman, Jordan. 1 woman, her husband, and 2 other men. 1 man went into the Days Inn, 1 man went into the Radisson, and the husband and wife, went into the Grand Hyatt. They pulled their detonators and killed a bunch of people, about 65 people in total. The woman lived. The woman lived and was captured. I don't know if you recall, now this is going back to 2005. I was there in the aftermath of the bombing. I did a bunch of press stuff for the King of Jordan in the aftermath. I don't know, like I said, that's 2005. It's 11 years ago. Last year, you may recall that ISIS captured a fighter pilot from Jordan. They caged him like an animal. They then saturated him with kerosene and gas, and they lit him on fire. And then they publicized it. The king, prior to that video, told them, if you kill my guy, I'm going to retaliate and kill, her name is Sajida, she was the female. That female bomber from 11 years ago, well, she had been in prison for 11 years on death row. They never pushed for the execution. They lit that guy on fire, posted that video. The king was in the States. Before the king's plane arrived back in Jordan, she was executed. Some people say it's harsh. Some people say, it's the wrong thing. It's the wrong law. It's the wrong way to operate. It's the wrong thing to do. Here's the problem. Here's what the king knows. Here's what I know. And anybody that's been in my position or knows this and understands this enemy, they know what I'm going to tell you. The people that despise our country and the way we live and the freedoms by which we live, There's no talking to these people. There's no negotiating. There's no diplomatic solution. They strongly believe in the strongest form, in the strongest way, that if you don't believe in their God and you don't pray to their God and you don't live within their laws, Sharia law, then they have the right to kill you. That's what they believe. The solution is short and sweet. We're going to kill them or they're going to kill us. That's reality. I know that's not a politically correct thing to say. I know people hate when I say that in the news or on TV, responding to something, but the reality is that's real. The King of Jordan will tell you that. Other heads of state in the Middle East will tell you that. The people that know and understand the enemy will tell you that. So our problem in this country right now is that we have a bunch of people in political positions that are afraid to say it, and they're afraid to deal with it. That's a big problem for us. It wouldn't be a problem if this enemy existed and it was just over in the Middle East. Well, we could deal with it in some way, and if that was it, that was it. Then it's over. The reality is that's not the case. There's a substantial enemy in the Middle East. That enemy is growing substantially, leaps and bounds. It's growing, and the enemy's here. Anybody that thinks that they're not here, you're either stupid or you're naive, one or the other. They're here. They've already proved they're here. Guy in Orlando, the husband and wife in San Bernardino, the kids up in Boston, and probably 10 others. We've had in excess close to 80 attacks or thwarted attacks in the United States since September 11th. Right now, the FBI director himself has said they have at least 1,100 possible targets under surveillance. We only have 14,000 federal agents, FBI agents. What does that tell you? Now, what's really scary to somebody like me, we have 1,100 of these guys under surveillance. Some of those guys that really did major damage, we didn't have them under surveillance. We weren't looking at them. That's pretty scary. So who's really out there? That's, whether it's in a cell capacity, whether it's a lone wolf, whether it's somebody that's inspired online, whether it's somebody that went overseas and was indoctrinated and radicalized and comes back to this country with the sole mission in life to destroy, kill, and maim Americans, we don't know. But they're here. And we've got to do something about it. Our president now, and whoever the president may be in the future, they've got to come to the realization that the enemy is real, it's severe, it's here, and we've got to do everything in our power to address it. One, first and foremost, abroad, we've got to take out the primary components of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab. I mean, I won't get into the names, and I often say this, forget the names. Forget the names, whether it's ISIS or ISIL or Al-Qaeda or whatever. Forget the names. Radical Islam. Radical Islam. These radical Islamic movements and these groups around the world that are growing, you've got to eliminate them where they are. Eliminate their training camps. Take them out, kill them dead. That has to happen abroad. Here in this country, we've got to make sure, first and foremost, that our intelligence capabilities are working better than ever before. We've done a lot since September 10th of 2001. Come a long way. We're much better in intelligence gathering and communications than we were in the past. But we're still lacking. And I'll tell you why. Just 2 hours ago, I was with the chief of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Elizabeth, New Jersey is where the bomber was from New York City. That's where he lived. The FBI had focused on that guy in the past based on complaints from his own family. But you know what? The chief of police in Elizabeth didn't know that. Okay? The guy in Orlando, Florida, the FBI had visited him or spoken to him and had him on the radar at least 2 or 3 times. Okay? Nobody from the police department in the community where he lived was aware that he was on that radar. Okay, that's extremely dangerous. It's dangerous on 2 fronts. The FBI doesn't have enough manpower to watch this guy. And 2, the people that do have the manpower, think of your local communities. Think of your local police. What do? They patrol, right? So if the FBI goes to them and says, look, we're looking at this guy at this address, not sure what he's doing, not sure if he's a bad guy, but we think he could be, well, guess what? You now have dozens of sets of eyes that can look at him where the FBI can't. We're not using that capability, and we should be. Okay? So that's the second part of this. The third part is a long-term strategic part in education where young Muslims around the world, especially in places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and some of the Emirates, they've got to be taught that jihad is not the way to live. They've got to be taught that we can all live together in a world of peace. And we need people to teach them. We need to hold countries accountable that don't do that. We have a tendency in this country, we want to be nice to everybody. We want to give, money, billions, millions of dollars to Pakistan or Afghanistan. Or we want to have some relationship with Saudi Arabia. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. But guess what? If you're teaching young Muslim children in madrasas, what is a Muslim school, it's a Sharia law school. If you're teaching kids in that country to hate Westerners and you're preaching this hate, then we shouldn't be giving you any money. President Bush once said, you're either with us or you're against us. You're with us or you're with the terrorist, one or the other. I think we lost sight of what he said. Can't lose sight of what he said. What he said is real. You're either with us or you're with them. If you're with them and you're going to support them and you're going to fund them and you're going to give them money and you're going to give them resources and you're going to sympathize with them, guess what? You're not with us. And we have to really stand by that thing, because if we don't, we basically, what do we do with Iran? We just gave Iran some crazy enormous amount of money. What are they going to do? I promise you that money is going to go back to areas where it's going to be used to attack us in other countries around the world. Why? I just think it's stupid, and it's got to stop. So that's my fear. That's my concern. And I think it should be the concern of every American in this country. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if, you're a liberal, you're conservative. It doesn't make any difference, because these guys don't differentiate when they attack. And, I hear Americans say, well, just let it be. Let it be? No, we've seen what let it be gets you. Doesn't work. So my position, and a bunch of people in this arena like me, I think my way is the way to go. People will disagree, that's fine. But I think that's the case. So with that, if you want, I'll take a few questions before I leave. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Having been in the city council, working on the police board, the narrative that you're bringing forth is very disruptive, very dangerous. Being in your experience in various ways, what do you think is the best counter to a community about what they're trying to achieve here, which is to destroy the building of police to really be effective? On one hand, they call for police in the neighborhood. On the other hand, they try to belittle the police and take away their spirit.
Okay, all right. So let me say a couple things. Now, this is my own personal opinion. You guys can disagree with me, whatever. Black Lives Matter is sort of a hate group to me. Okay, and here's the problem: the narrative that they portray is being echoed and promoted by political leaders all over this country because they don't have the courage to call it what it is, okay? They don't have it. And I'm gonna give you something that you can think about in numbers, okay? Because the political players won't do this. The people that are against the movement, like I am, they don't get it like I get it, but I'm gonna give you something to think about. 2015, last year. We had 14,800,000 arrests in the United States. Close to 15 million. 15 million arrests. Okay? Everybody got that? In order to get 15 million arrests, I promise you, there were 20 million police suspect confrontations, right? You don't arrest everybody, but I can assure you there's about 20 million police suspect confrontations. That's police confronting some suspect, something, and then 15 million arrests arise out of it. Out of the 15 million arrests, there were 951 people shot and killed by cops. Out of 15 million, okay? 951. Out of the 951, there were maybe 10. Maybe 10. But you know what? I'll double it. I'll give you 20. There were maybe 20 shootings that were questionable. Out of 951 and 15 million arrests. Okay? Now, I'm no mathematician. In fact, I'm a moron when it comes to math. But I will tell you that percentage is so low, I don't even know what that number is. It's far, far less than 0.1%. Yet you have political leaders that stand up on TV and say we have a systemic problem with police shooting African Americans. Okay? Okay, now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That 951 shootings, 951 people killed by cops, 500 were white. 250 were black. Okay? I can promise you There's no systemic evidence, statistical evidence. There's no evidence that there is this systematic danger of police shooting and killing minorities. Okay. Is every cop perfect? No. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Do we have bad guys on police departments out there? Yeah, once in a while. When we get them, when we catch them, they get handled. Whether it's administratively within the department, whether it's criminally, they'll be identified, they find them. But anybody that tells you that there's this systemic thing that's going on around the country, it's just a lie. It's a lie. And it makes me sick to hear the political leaders in this country talk about a systemic problem when there's no real evidence, no statistical evidence, no evidence at all that demonstrates that. So I hope that answers you.
I heard a clip of a police official on TV this afternoon apologizing. I think he was from California. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
No, I did. You know, honestly, I did not see it, but I can tell you that my phone, my battery is almost dead because I got about 25 text messages in the last 4 hours about this statement that this chief made. I don't know if it was taken out of context. I didn't hear it. I can't comment on it, but I can tell you that there's some really unhappy cops and chiefs all over the country because they're in my phone. And they're all complaining about what he said. I don't know what he said. I don't know if it was taken out of context. And because I didn't see it or hear it, I don't want to comment. I don't think an apology is needed.
They have these terrorist attacks. They seem to roll up a whole conspiracy. They seem to relate it to ISIS. Here, they're all lone wolf attacks. But is that really the case? I know in Boston, a judge went in the middle of the inquiry of the terrorists and stopped the investigation, read his Miranda rights when that wasn't necessary. So are they really lone wolf or are they really conspiracy?
You know what? I have to be honest. To me, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. I don't care. I don't care. When somebody, you know, I'm trying to think of the last. The bomber, the New York bomber. As that case unfolded, you know, people were calling me saying, well, maybe he was indoctrinated, maybe he was radicalized, but he went to Afghanistan, but we don't really know if he got trained. Listen, if you plant a bomb to kill a bunch of people, that's terrorism. That's terrorism. You could say it's domestic terrorism. You whatever you want to. I don't care how you claim it, how you call it. Bottom line is, it's terrorism. And the problem with what you're saying is, we become this politically correct, you know, thing, a government and society, that everybody's scared to death to call it what it is. And I have to say, you know, I don't know what you guys thought of Rudy Giuliani. I happen to believe I worked for one of the best leaders in this country who called, you know, whatever it was, it was. You know, if I needed resources in New York City, if I needed manpower, I needed equipment, and this is one of the biggest focal points. When I ran Rikers Island, you know, a lot of mayors, a lot of governors, even the federal government, they don't give a damn about prisons and jails. They don't care. They won't put any money into them. They'll take all the program services out of them, and basically, you know, no money goes in. Well, what a lot of mayors and a lot of governors and people in the White House don't understand is, you know, there's a bunch of people in prison that weren't really bad people. They may have made a mistake. They may have done something wrong, but they're not bad people. But you know what we do? We take them and we put them in prison and we turn them into animals. We do that intentionally. We institutionalize them. We suck all the societal values out of them and we leave them in there and we turn them into animals. And I can say this. I can say it. Maybe a lot of people in my position, they can't say it. Maybe a lot of people in my position wouldn't have the courage to say it, but I could say it. And the reason I could say it is because I ran Rikers. And for 6 years, I got to see how bad jails and prisons could be. But remember when I told you that I was nominated for Homeland Security? Well, when I got nominated for Homeland Security by George Bush, I had to decline that position because I had a nanny that I did not pay tax on. I paid my nanny cash. My wife and I paid our servant, the girl that took care of our kids, we paid her cash. It started a 5-year investigation. 5 years. In 2009, I was sent to prison for 4 years. I went to a federal prison, and I stayed in that prison for 3 years and 11 days for false statements and tax charges relating to my daughter's nanny and some apartment renovations I had. I can promise you, there are people in prison that are just like you. I met people in prison that commercial fishermen, they caught too many fish. They're in federal prison. A guy sold a whale's tooth on eBay. Federal prison. Young, first-time, low-level, non-violent drug offenders, 15 years. 15 years. And I know there's people out there that will hear this and go, well, they get what they deserve. Well, I say 2 things. 1, be careful what you wish for. Because the way this government's going now, every person in this room could wind up in federal prison. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's a scary, scary feeling to sit back where I've been and watch what's going on today. When you have a presidential candidate that is in the position Hillary Clinton is in and has done 100 times more than most of the men that I was with in prison. And she's not being prosecuted. That's a scary, scary thought. Anyway.
Commissioner, back through the years, the administration presently and previous administrations considered Saudi Arabia as an ally. Yet Saudi Arabia is the chief promoter of Wahhabism, radical Islam. What was your observations when you were there, and now for the future, how can we continue to support Saudi Arabia under the circumstances?
Saudi Arabia was an ally basically because of the oil circumstance,
Yeah.
right? When I was there back in the late 70s, early 80s, this was not a focus. Nobody focused on it. Nobody looked at it. Nobody thought about it. Now that everybody's gotten to take a look at it, everything you said is 100% right. And as I said before, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the madrasas, the mosques that teach the young and promote this stuff, the money that goes into the Wahhabi groups, the money that goes into Al-Qaeda, the money that goes into ISIS. Now, something's happened as of late where, Saudi Arabia's throne is jeopardized. Saudi Arabia right now, 3 weeks ago, the Ministry of Interior in Saudi Arabia had a major raid and locked up probably 200 people, counterterrorism stuff. They're aggressively hitting it now, but that's because they're afraid. And this goes back to what you were saying initially. Think of a bully in a schoolyard. I knew a lot of bullies when I grew up. So you think of a bully in a schoolyard. The bully in a schoolyard wants money. You give him money, he's going to leave you alone. But then he wants more money. You give him a little more money, he'll leave you alone a little more. Well, at some point, you either run out of money or he wants so much money you can't afford it, and you get your tail beat anyway, okay? That's what happened in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia took care of these guys. Qatar took care of these guys. They were paying, they were bribing, they were giving money. You know what? Now it doesn't work. So Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and these other groups, these other states, they have issues. And the issue is they now have to deal with it. So our intelligence people are working closely with them, but we still have to be extremely careful because they're problematic.
When Iran gets a nuclear weapon and the means to deliver it, what is your take on what they might do, particularly where Israel's concerned?
Well, listen, all you have to do is ask them. They'll tell you. They want to blow Israel off the map. They've said it. They've made it very clear. They've said it numerous times. You know, and listen, this is one of our greatest downfalls. One of these attacks happen, whether it's here in the States or somewhere else, and I'll get calls, and the first call, the press will say to me, does this surprise you? Okay. You have to be a moron. If I said, yeah, oh yeah, I'm shocked. No, I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised by what goes on here, and I'm not surprised by what can go on there because they tell us constantly. Go on social media, go on Twitter, go on Facebook, look at some of the radical sites. They tell us every day they're coming, every day. And then we have some lone wolf, something go on in this state, in the States, and people look at you and go, oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. I can't believe it. You can't believe it? Why? You didn't believe what they said? They said it. We're not saying it. In Iran's case, they want to blow Israel off the map. They want to decimate Israel. I strongly believe, and Netanyahu is right in saying they can't get that weapon. If they get the weapon, Israel is going to have a big problem. I believe that. Yes, ma'am.
Well, in 2 weeks, with great probability, we'll have Hillary as the president. And it's this criminal, corrupted, traitor, whatever everyone knows in this room at least. So,
Hold on, we're going.
what a great part in this will be registration, elections, the process. Do you think it could be controlled somehow?
Listen, the problem with the elections is, you know, and I know I've watched and I've heard Donald Trump say the elections are rigged. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the documentary stuff it's only come out in the last 24 hours. Right, where they've been, you know, out there soliciting information where basically they're saying they're a corrupt machine trying to change the election. Okay, first of all, anybody that doesn't think that stuff hasn't gone on for years, that's crazy. It's gone on for years, okay? And this is just a stepped-up operation. But I'm going to tell you something. If you want Donald Trump to win, then you've got to make sure you go vote. Because we're in a position right now, you know, yesterday the headline news on the Washington Post was, she already won. This is a propaganda machine that's trying to push people into the mindset, no sense in voting, she already won, and everybody sits back and does nothing. Don't do that. Vote your heart, vote what you want, get out and vote, register to vote, and, you know, pray for the best. One last question. Yes, sir.
My daughter who lives in Texas, you know, she said, she spoke radical Islam.
Right.
And even though I went through all kinds of training with immigration, built it over the international community, we were never really trained in it. So I just wonder if that's like a defect of training with immigration. Because you seem very fluent. My daughter who lives in Texas, the Texans are different.
No, it's a different country, Texas. It's not even the same. It's not even close. So here's the deal: whether it's immigration or whether it's any other government agency, only in the last 10, 12, 13 years, in the aftermath of September 11th, did people start to really look at what the enemy is. You know, there's a few people in law enforcement right up until the time they hit the towers that focused on Al-Qaeda, focused on Osama bin Laden, focused on radical Islam, focused on the different groups. But this stuff has been around for years, years and years and years. You know, Joe Hakeem back there, sitting in the back there, nobody knows this stuff better than that guy. Nobody knows it better than him. He gets it, he understands, he's lived it. He's lived it, he's from Beirut, he's lived it. The problem is, we're just getting into it. And as long as we have government agencies that focus more so on political correctness than reality, we're going to have issues where people don't get it, people don't understand. And that's a problem. Dude, I got news for you. He's a part of a lot of problems.
Well, everybody, please, let's give a big hand for Bernie. He's done a wonderful job. And, you know, two things. Bernie has a Facebook page, so if you want, get out there and follow him. And also, if you'll take what he says to heart, you'll not only vote, you'll get out and have the candidates get out the vote. So as we said before, please make sure you do that. Thanks a lot. You did a wonderful job. Now, guys, we do have a donation, you know, barrel back there. It helps us if you can, you know, find a few dollars in your wallet that you don't need on the way out, because that's how we get this hall, and that's how we get our guests, that's how we get everything going. We appreciate it a lot. Hope you had a great night. I did. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.